So good morning students. Today we are going to discuss about the unit chapter 5 digestion and absorption, the same chapter. Under that last class we have discussed about the alimentary canal. Okay, today we are going to discuss about the digestive gland and digestion. Okay, under digestive gland we are going to discuss about salivary gland, gastric gland, liver and pancreas. Under digestion we are going to discuss about how digestion is taking place in buccal cavity, stomach and small intestine. First we will discuss about the digestive gland. So the digestive glands, the alimentary canal is usually mainly the digestive tract usually includes alimentary canal and its associated glands. So last class we have discussed about the alimentary canals. Okay, now this class we are going to discuss about the digestive gland. Okay, so the digestive glands are exocrine glands and they are able to secrete a biological catalyst called enzymes. So what is the main role of digestive gland? They are exocrine glands and they secrete enzymes. These digestive glands mainly associated with the alimentary canal are mainly of four types. One is a salivary gland, another one is called as a gastric gland, and the third one is called as a liver, and fourth one is called as a pancreas. So these are the four different digestive glands. So first we will discuss about the salivary gland. Okay, when you come to this salivary gland, these salivary glands are usually three pairs of salivary glands are present. Three pairs of salivary glands are present. They are called as a parotid gland. Number one is called as a parotid gland. They are present on the cheek on either side of your cheeks. So this is a cheek, on either side of your cheeks your parotid gland is present. And next to that is a submaxillary and submandibular gland. This submaxillary and submandibular gland are present in the lower jaw, on either side of your lower jaw region. And then third important gland that constitutes your salivary gland is sublingual gland. This sublingual gland is present below the tongue. So you will be having three pairs of the salivary gland. Okay, number one is called as a parotid gland, number two is called as a submaxillary and submandibular gland, and number three is called as a sublingual gland. So these glands are usually associated with the ducts. Okay, so parotid gland is usually able to secrete its salivary juices by means of Stenson's duct. So similarly sublingual glands are able to secrete its juices by means of Wharton's duct. And similarly, submaxillary and mandibular is able to secrete its juices by means of Wharton's gland, and sublingual gland is able to secrete its juice by means of a duct called Bartholin's duct. So we are discussed about the different three pairs of glands and its associated ducts. Okay, now totally how much number of saliva are usually produced by this particular salivary gland? So mainly the salivary gland is able to produce nearly 1000 to 1500 saliva per ml per day. Okay, it can able to produce 1000 to 1500 ml of saliva is produced by the salivary gland per day. Okay, so the salivary juice secreted by salivary gland reaches the mouth and they are able to undergo the digestion of food in the mouth. Okay. So we have discussed about how many pairs of salivary glands are present and what are the associated ducts this particular salivary glands have, and actually where the salivary gland is able to produce. Only the salivary glands are produced seen in the mouth. Next we will discuss about the second important gland, that is liver. So the liver is the largest gland in our body. Liver is the largest gland in our body and it usually lies in the upper side of your right side of abdominal cavity. Usually it is present in the abdominal cavity, especially in the upper right side of your body and just below your diaphragm. Okay, that's the main location of your liver. So the liver usually consists of two lobes. Okay, one is called as a major lobe, another one is called as a minor lobe. Mainly it consists of two lobes, that is usually called as a left lobe and a right lobe. So you can see from this diagram. Okay, you can see from this diagram, this is the left lobe and this is the right lobe. So liver consists of two lobes. Okay, these two lobes are usually attached to the diaphragm and these two lobes are usually separated by means of a structure called as a falciform ligament. Is it clear? So these two lobes of liver is usually called as a left and right lobe. So this left and right lobe is called as a major left lobe and major right lobe. And apart from this, you have minor left lobe and right lobes. But generally, if you take a liver, it usually consists of two lobes. One is left lobe and right lobe, left major and right major. Next, when you come to this liver, it usually consists of many lobules in these lobes. So what these lobes are mainly made up of? These lobes are mainly made up of small lobules. Okay? Okay, these lobules are the functional unit of your lobes. Okay, so these lobules are present in the lobe. They are the functional unit of your liver. So these lobules usually having liver cells or hepatocytes. What these lobules are having? It is having liver cells or hepatocytes. These liver cells or hepatocytes, they are able to secrete an important juice called a bile. These bile secreted in these lobules are able to reach this gallbladder. So this is liver, and they are able to secrete this juice called as bile, and it is able to reach this gallbladder by means of a duct called a hepatic duct. So hepatic duct is a duct that is capable of collecting the bile that is produced by your lobules of your liver, and then it is able to reach the gallbladder. In the gallbladder, the bile will be temporarily stored and concentrated, and then finally this the gallbladder is able to release the bile into the pancreas. So how it is released? So the duct that is present in the gallbladder is called as a cystic duct. So this cystic duct, it usually pass down and it mixes with the hepatic duct, and it forms a common duct called a common bile duct. Okay, so cystic duct is a gallbladder duct. It passes down and mixes with the hepatic or liver duct and forms a common duct called a common bile duct. This common bile duct is through this common bile duct, the bile will be transferred to the pancreas. So in the pancreas is able to have a duct called as a pancreatic duct or duct of Wierson. So this pancreatic duct as well as this common bile duct, they fuse together, and they are able to form a common duct called a hepatopancreatic duct. Okay, so the bile along with the secretions from the pancreas. Okay, pancreas is also another important gland. So the pancreas is able to secrete some juices. Okay, these juices also mixes with the bile juices, and it will be transferred into the U-shaped duodenum by means of a common duct called a hepatopancreatic duct. So hepatopancreatic duct is a fusion of both the ducts, that is the common bile duct as well as the pancreatic duct. Okay, so what is the other functions of your, and this release of this particular bile is usually under the control of your sphincter of Oddi. So it is a regulatory muscles. Okay, there is a regulatory muscles. These regulatory muscles usually regulate the flow of bile from the hepatopancreatic duct into the duodenum. Okay, then we have discussed about what is liver and how it is what it is able to produce, and through what duct it is capable of reaching the duodenum. Next we will see about what is the functions of your liver. Okay, liver usually able to store the glucose in the form of glycogen. Okay, the excess of glucose which we are able to take, it is usually stored in the form of glycogen, and especially in the liver. And whenever we are starving of glucose, these glycogen will be broken down, and then again it will be released into the blood. Okay, so from the liver. So another important functions of your liver is that it is mainly capable of storing fat soluble vitamins and ions. That is another important functions. It also detoxifies the toxic substances. So when you are able to take any food or any drugs, and if it is converted into toxic, these toxic substances are removed by your liver. And it is also mainly involved in the synthesis of non-essential amino acids and urea. So non-essential amino acids and urea are also being synthesized in the liver. Another important functions of your liver is that it can able to it is a graveyard for the dead cells. So a lot of dead and aging blood cells, no, they are all been mainly processed in the liver. So liver is a site for removing all the old as well as the damaged blood cells. Okay, so these are the 5 important functions of your liver. We have discussed about the salivary gland as well as the liver. Next we'll move on to the third important gland, that is pancreas. Okay, so the first largest gland is a liver. The second important gland is a pancreas. So this pancreatic gland is the second largest gland, and it is usually capable of producing both exocrine as well as the endocrine juices. Okay, it can able to produce a exocrine and endocrine juices. So pancreas is usually yellow color compound. Okay, pancreas is basically an yellow colored compound. Okay, yellow color and is a elongated compound, and it is capable of producing exocrine as well as endocrine cells. It is having both the cells, exocrine and endocrine cells. That is the main specialty of your pancreas. What is exocrine? Any gland that is capable of producing its secretions through ducts, that is exocrine. Then what is endocrine? It does not have any glands. Directly whatever the juices that is produced in the pancreas, it is directly released in the absence of duct. That is called as a endocrine. So these pancreatids are usually situated between the U-shaped duodenum. If you look at this previous structure, you have a U-shaped duodenum that is starting from the stomach. In the U-shaped duodenum, the space, the pancreatids are get situated. Okay, the exocrine portion secrete pancreatic juice. Okay, the exocrine of your pancreas is capable of producing a pancreatic juice, that is pancreatic amylase, trypsin, pancreatic lipase. Okay, and the endocrine part is able to produce endocrine part of your pancreas is called as a islets of Langerhans, and it is capable of producing an hormones called insulin and glucagon. So your pancreas is having 2 types of cells, exocrine cells, endocrine cells. Exocrine cells produces pancreatic amylase, trypsin, pancreatic lipase, and endocrine portion secretes hormones. Okay, so especially insulin and glucagon. All these exocrine and endocrine, they are able to enter the intestine only through duodenum. Okay, next. So next we will see the continuation of the digestive system. Especially we have completed the digestive gland, and we are going to discuss about the digestion of your food. So what is the digestion? The process of digestion usually converts the solid food into absorbable and assimilated forms. So the solid food will be usually converted into assimilated and absorbable form. That is the main goal of your digestion, and is usually accomplished by means of 2 ways. One is mechanical digestion, another one is by means of chemical process. Okay, so first we will discuss about the digestion in the buccal cavity. So when you are able to take food inside in your mouth, no, the presence of the smell, sight and taste of the food, no, it will try to stimulate the reflex action in the mouth. Okay, and since the reflex action is being stimulated, as well as the mechanical presence of this food, because of the mechanical presence of food in the mouth, and as well as because of the trigger, because of reflex actions, the food will be able to produce secretions called salivary secretions. Okay, so the secretion of saliva is usually, the secretion of saliva in the mouth is usually by means of 2 ways. One is by means of mechanical stimulation, another one is by means of nerve stimulation, that is reflex action. So once the presence of food is being sensed by our mouth, then the saliva is secreted. So this inside in the buccal cavity, the mechanical digestion usually starts in the mouth. How? It by grinding and chewing of food. The food, once you are taken in the mouth, it will be grinded and chewed, and we call this process as mastication. Okay, grinding and chewing of food is called as a mastication, and it is an example for mechanical digestion of food. And next to that is the chemical digestion of food in the mouth. So what, as the name indicates, what is chemical digestion? Some amount of enzymes and other chemicals will be added in the food, and this will aid for the digestion of food. That is called as a chemical digestion. So what are the other chemicals that is produced in the saliva? So the saliva usually consists of water, electrolyte, salivary amylase, and antibacterial agent, that is lysozyme, and the lubricating agent, that is mucus. So these are the composition of your saliva. Okay. So what is the role of your salivary amylase? This salivary amylase, it will be an inactive amylase. Okay. Once the food enters, it becomes activated, and these salivary amylase are able to produce, are able to cleave the polysaccharide, that is starch. Okay, it is able to cleave the polysaccharide, that is starch, that is present in the food, and it produces a disaccharide called maltose. Okay, what is the role of the salivary amylase? Salivary amylase cleaves the polysaccharide, especially amylose. Okay, it will cleave the starch. It cleaves the starch. The starch usually has amylose. So this amylose in the starch will be cleaved by the salivary amylase, and it produces a disaccharide molecule, that is maltose. Okay. So then what is the other role of your especially 30% of polysaccharides, okay, mainly cleaved by means of this salivary amylase. So the first digestion, chemical digestion, that is takes place is in the mouth only. And what type of chemicals are digested? Only the polysaccharide, the carbohydrates are digested in the mouth. Okay. Next, what is the role of this mucus that is present in the saliva? The mucus in the saliva, it is usually helps for preparing the food to swallow. So normally the food will be very hard, no? It is not easy to swallow. So what actually the mucus is doing? The mucus in the saliva, it prepares the food for swallowing. Okay, how it is preparing the food for swallowing? It is just by moistening, softening and lubricating and adhering the masticated food into the bolus. So these saliva will mix with the food, and it will soften the food, moisten the food and lubricate the food. So all this process will help the food to get easily swallowed. And then it causes the attachment of this masticated food into a bolus. So after this, the food will be converted into a small ball-like substances, and it is called as a bolus. So normally you take a food, the food mixed with the mucus, and it is also able to undergo mechanical and chemical digestion. Okay. Finally, it will be converted into a small ball-like substances, and it is called as a bolus. So these bolus now is able to pass from your mouth into the esophagus through the pharynx by means of swallowing. So food present in the mouth is able to pass through the pharynx, and then finally it enters a long tube-like structure that is called as a esophagus. So by means of a process called a deglutation or swallowing. What is the process? It is called as a deglutation or swallowing. The bolus further passes down through the esophagus. So now the bolus is present in the esophagus, a long tube-like structure. These bolus now it moves from the esophagus into the stomach. Okay, how it is able to move? By means of muscular contraction, by means of waves of muscular contraction. The bolus which is present in the esophagus is able to pass through the stomach, and we call this process as peristalsis. So the bolus from the mouth is able to enter into the esophagus through pharynx, and we call this process as deglutations, and then from the esophagus the bolus is able to pass into the stomach by a wave of muscular contraction in the esophagus, and we call this process as peristalsis. Next to that is the gastroesophageal sphincter. The gastroesophageal sphincter is usually present in the stomach, and then it usually controls the passage of food into the stomach. Okay, it is present in between the esophagus and the stomach. So this is a muscular sphincter, that is gastroesophageal. As the name indicates, it is a sphincter or a control or regulatory muscle present between the esophagus and the stomach. So only it is called as a esophagus gastrial sphincter, and this controls the flow of food from the esophagus into the stomach. So now we have discussed about what is exactly the digestion taking place in the especially in the buccal cavity, as well as how it is passed into the stomach. Next we'll move on to the digestion in the stomach. So now the bolus is able to pass into the stomach, and it is a small solid substances, that is bolus. Now what is happening to the bolus in the stomach? So food remains in the stomach for about 4 to 5 hours. Food remains in the stomach for about 4 to 5 hours, and because of the rhythmic peristaltic movement, Okay, it mixes the food with the gastric juices. So when you take this stomach, no, the stomach usually consists of important glands. Okay, stomach usually consists of many important glands, and these glands are usually having many important cells. Okay, these cells are usually helps for the digestion of your bolus. So now we are going to discuss about what are the glands present in the stomach and what it is secreting, what these glands are secreting, and how these secretions are useful for the digestion of your food. So now food usually remains in the stomach for 4 to 5 hours, and because of this rhythmic peristaltic movement, okay, rhythmic peristaltic movement of food mixes this bolus with the gastric juice produced by the stomach. Okay, so mixing of food with the gastric juice is called as a chyme. When a food is mixed with the gastric juice, this gastric juice is basically liquid, no? So it makes the food into a creamy liquid. So when a food is mixed with the gastric juice and it is able to form a creamy liquid, it is called as a chyme. So now the bolus, the solid food, is converted into liquid food, that is chyme. Okay, next, what is happening to this chyme in the stomach? The gastric secretions are partially under the control of your autonomous reflexes. So the gastric secretions usually begins when a food is present in the mouth itself. Okay, what is actually the gastric juice contains? The gastric juice contains HCl and proenzymes. What it contains? HCl and proenzymes. So what is the role of this HCl? This HCl is usually able to provide a optimum acidic medium for the enzyme pepsin. Okay, so it is able to produce HCl as well as an enzyme called as a proenzyme called as a pepsinogen. So two things are usually present in the gastric juice. One is HCl, another one is pepsinogen. The HCl will provide an acidic medium for this particular enzyme, proenzyme pepsinogen. So under the presence of this acidic medium, this inactive proenzyme, that is pepsinogen, gets activated into pepsin, and this pepsin is able to cleave the proteins into peptidoses and peptones. Okay, so the pepsinogen is an inactive form of enzyme. It will be activated in the presence of acidic environment, that is by means of HCl. Okay, HCl produces acidic environment and the enzymes get activated into pepsin, active form of pepsin. Okay, inactive form of pepsinogen is converted into active form of pepsin by the action of acidic environment. This active form of pepsin cleaves the proteins into peptidose and peptones, that is peptides. Okay, so apart from activating the enzymes, what is the other role of this HCl? HCl is providing an acidic medium as well as it kills various bacteria and other harmful organisms, and it is also provides putrefaction. So many harmful bacteria, anything is present in the food, no, that will be cleaved or that will be killed in the stomach itself. Okay, and what is putrefaction? It is breakdown of proteins. No, it tries to avoid the breakdown of proteins in the stomach. Okay, so in case of saliva, in case of mouth, only the carbohydrate is being digested. 30% of carbohydrates or polysaccharides are digested in the mouth. In the stomach, what is actually digested? Trypsin, that is in the stomach mainly enzyme pepsin is able to digest the proteins. Next, apart from these HCl as well as salivary amylase, the saliva is also, apart from this, it is the gastric juice also having mucus. So we have discussed HCl and salivary amylase. Apart from this, it is also having mucus and bicarbonates. This mucus and bicarbonates are present in the gastric juice, and these mucus and bicarbonates play an important role for the lubrication and protection of the mucous epithelium from the eroding nature of your HCl. Since the HCl is produced, no, though it is activating the enzymes, but it will try to erode the epithelial cells that is lining the stomach. So this eroding of these epithelial cells that is lining the stomach is usually being avoided by the presence of this mucus. So the other important role is the mucus plays a major important role for prevention of the eroding of the epithelial cells. Another important enzyme that is present in the stomach is a renin. Renin is another important enzyme that is present in the that is produced by the stomach, especially in the infants. So this enzyme renin helps to digest the milk protein that is casinogen into casein. Okay, casinogen is a milk protein. It is a unavailable form of protein. This protein is converted into an easily available form, that is casein, by means of an enzyme renin. So this is the second proteolytic digestive enzymes that is produced only in the infant, and as a baby ages, the production of these enzymes get stopped. Okay. So now we have discussed about how the digestion is taking place in the buccal cavity as well as in the stomach. Now the food which is present in the stomach is usually in the form of chyme, and now we are going to discuss how this chyme, which is a creamy liquid form of food, is usually undergoing digestion in the small intestine. So in small intestine, mainly the bile, pancreatic juice and intestinal juice are secreted in the small intestine. Okay. So the food, because of the movement that is generated by the muscular layer of your small intestine. Okay. So some movements are generated by the muscular layer of your small intestine. As a result of this movement, the food thoroughly mixes with various secretions of your intestine, and it helps for the digestion, and it helps or it aids in the digestion of your food. Okay, food mixed or properly mixed with the various intestinal secretions by the muscular movement. Okay, muscular movement generated by the small intestine is usually helping the mixing of food with the gastric or intestinal juices. Okay, and because of this, it helps for the digestion. Now we will see what are the digestion that is carried out by bile, pancreatic as well as intestinal juices. First we will discuss about what is the digestion that is carried out by bile. The bile usually contains bile pigments like bilirubin and bilirubinin, and it helps in the breakdown of the hemoglobin of RBC, dead RBCs. Okay, so that's the main role of your bile pigments. So bile is capable of producing bile pigments, bile salts, and apart from this, it is also capable of producing cholesterol and phospholipid. Okay, so bile capable of producing 4 important components. One is bile salts, bile pigments, cholesterol and phospholipid. Okay, so bile usually helps in the emulsification of fat. What is meant by emulsification of fat? When large fat globules are converted or being broken down into small droplets. Okay, large fat globules are broken down into small fine droplets, and this breakdown of large globules into fine droplets is called as emulsification. Okay, it is called as a emulsification. So mainly the bile, which is especially the bile salts. Okay, the bile salts is present in the bile, and these bile salts are mainly responsible for this emulsification of fat. Okay, next, then bile is also having various enzymes like lipases. Okay, these lipases, again it will digest the fine droplets. It will digest the emulsified fat. We already discussed bile salts will help for the emulsification of fat, that is conversion of large fat globules into fine droplets. That is called as emulsified fat. This emulsified fat which is present is further undergo digestion by the help of an enzyme called as a lipase. Okay, so these lipase will be present in this bile, and this will be activated, and this lipase will further digest the emulsified fat, and it converts the lipid into fatty acid and monoglycerides. It converts the lipids into fatty acid and monoglycerides. So the chyme, which is a liquid part, is usually consist of your lipids, and lipids will be emulsified, and finally it will be digested by the action of the enzyme lipases that is present in the bile. So that's the role of your bile. Okay, bile consists of bile juices. Bile mainly liver is able to produce bile, and bile usually consists of pigments, bile salts, cholesterol and phospholipid, and mainly the bile salts are helpful for the digestion of fats. Next one is that important juice that is present in the small intestine is pancreatic juice. So what is the role of this pancreatic juice? This pancreatic juice usually contains an enzyme called trypsinogen. It can able to produce another enzyme called pancreatic amylase. It can able to produce pancreatic lipase and pancreatic nucleases. So 4 important enzymes are produced: pancreatic lipase, pancreatic amylase, pancreatic nucleases and trypsinogen. So these are the important enzymes that is produced by the pancreatic juice, okay, that is available in the pancreatic juice, and these pancreatic juice are produced by pancreas. So now we have to discuss what is the role of this trypsinogen, amylase, lipase and nucleases. This trypsinogen is an inactivated form of your enzyme. It is an inactivated form of enzyme, and this trypsinogen under the action of the enzyme enterokinase, that is secreted by the intestinal mucosa, okay. Under the action of enterokinase, this inactivated form of trypsinogen is converted into active form, that is trypsin, and this active form of trypsin in turn activates the chymotrypsinogen. It is also another important inactive form of enzyme, okay. So trypsinogen is converted into trypsin. Trypsin is able to convert this chymotrypsinogen and into trypsinogen, okay. Is it clear? Trypsinogen is an inactive form of enzyme that is converted into active form trypsin under the action of the enzyme enterokinase. This trypsin in turn activates the inactivated enzyme chymotrypsinogen into trypsin. Clear? Next, what is the role of this particular trypsin and chymotrypsin? So trypsin acts on proteins and converts the proteins into peptides, whereas this chymotrypsinogen, which has been activated by this trypsin to chymotrypsin, this will hydrolyze the peptide bonds that is present in the polypeptides, and it cleaves the polypeptides into specific amino acids, okay. So the main enzymes present in the your pancreatic juice enzyme is trypsin as well as chymotrypsin, okay. Trypsin breakdowns proteins into polypeptide and peptides, and this trypsin also activates the chymotrypsinogen. That is the main two role of your trypsin, okay. Then what will happen once the chymotrypsinogen is activated? It will be converted into active form chymotrypsin. This chymotrypsin further hydrolyzes the peptide bond present in the polypeptide that is produced from the trypsin, and it converts into dipeptide and tripeptides of your proteins. So that is the main role of your trypsin as well as chymotrypsin. So we have discussed about what is the role of your pancreatic trypsinogen. Next we will discuss about the role of pancreatic amylase. Pancreatic amylase converts the glycogen and the starch into maltose. Glycogen and starch are polysaccharide. These polysaccharides are converted into a disaccharide called maltose, okay. So then lipase, pancreatic lipase acts on the emulsified fat, as I already discussed, right, and it converts into free fatty acid and monoglycerides, and then these monoglycerides are further hydrolyzed and it is converted into fatty acid and glycerol. So pancreatic lipase we already discussed, okay. It is converting that fat into, it causes the emulsification of fat, and this emulsified fat is finally hydrolyzed into fatty acid and glycerol. That is the role of your pancreatic lipase. Pancreatic protease also you have discussed. Then pancreatic amylase converts the glycogen into and starch into maltose. This also we finished. Then finally, what is the role of your nucleases? The nucleases is usually able to break down the nucleic acids into nucleotides and nucleosides. So that is the main functions of your pancreatic nucleases. So 4 important enzymes produced by pancreatic juice and its respective digestion of the macromolecules in the food we have discussed. Next is the secretion of Brunner's gland, okay. The final important secretion which we are going to discuss in the small intestine is the intestinal juices. We have discussed about pancreatic juices, bile, we have discussed about 2 important things. Then third important thing is the intestinal juices. So Brunner's gland, secretion from the Brunner's gland along with the secretions of intestinal gland, okay. So 2 important glands are involved. One is Brunner's gland, another one is called as the intestinal gland. These 2 glands constitute and they will able to secrete their juices, and we call these juices as intestinal juices. The other name for intestinal juices is succus intricus. Okay. So these intestinal juices usually contains an enzyme called, you see this one. So these are the intestinal juices that contains various enzymes. What are the enzymes that are present in the intestinal juices? One is called as a maltose, that converts maltose into monomeric unit glucose. It contains sucrase, converts sucrose into glucose. It contains lactase, converts lactose into glucose. Contains peptidase, it converts the dipeptides and tripeptides of your proteins into amino acids. This is the final end product of your digestion. And then it is these intestinal juices is also having, apart from these enzymes, it is also having nucleotidase. Nucleotidase converts the nucleotides into nucleoside and phosphoric acid. Is it clear? And it is also having an enzyme nucleosidase. It converts the nucleoside into nitrogenous base and sugar. And then it is also having lipases. It converts the diglycerides and monoglycerides into fatty acid and glycerol. So that is the main role of your enzyme that is present in the intestinal juices. So mucus with bicarbonate ions. So mucus in the presence of bicarbonate ions, it provides a pH medium of about 7.8. It provides a pH of 7.8, that is a alkaline medium. Under this alkaline medium, all these enzymes are active and it converts these macromolecules, the intermediate macromolecules into the final simpler macromolecules. Finally, all the macromolecules, complex food materials are converted into simpler forms, okay, by means of these enzymes, and these enzymes are active only under the alkaline pH 7.8, and it is usually provided by mucus and bicarbonate ions. So as a result of this digestion, all the macromolecules are being converted into the simpler forms. Okay, all the macromolecules are converted into simpler forms. Carbohydrate is converted into glucose, fructose and galactose. Proteins are converted into amino acids. Lipids are converted into fatty acid and glycerol. Okay, these simple substances which is present in the small intestines are usually absorbed in the jejunum and ileum of your small intestine. So which part of your small intestine is able to absorb this digested food? Only the jejunum and ileum is capable of absorbing this digested food in the small intestine. The undigested and unabsorbed food. Some foods will not be digested, some plant foods, and some foods which will not also be absorbed. So these are called as unabsorbed food. So the unabsorbed and undigested food are usually being transferred to the large intestine. Okay. So this activity of the intestinal activities are usually under the control of neural and hormonal. Okay. The activities that is taking place in the alimentary canal are under the control of neural and hormonal control, and the gastric and intestinal secretions are being under the stimulation of neural. Is it clear? Okay. Next, in the next class we are going to discuss how these digested food which is present in the small intestine is being absorbed in the large, how it is absorbed in the small intestine. So we have discussed about the digestion in the small intestine. Next class we will discuss about how these digested food are being absorbed in the small intestine and what are the other intestinal disorders. So that we will going to discuss in the next class. Thank you.